I am annoyed by having to defend Miami, because if Miami took care of business in the ACC, the way Texas Tech has taken care of business in the Big 12, I wouldn't have to be here wasting all this energy on Miami. Hello and welcome to The Audible, presented by Trader Joe's. I'm Ralph Russo with my colleagues from The Athletic, Stuart Mandel, Bruce Feldman. Later in the show, we are going to have a very Ole Miss-centric mailbag, hit on all things Lane Kiffin. But first, folks, we are going to argue about some college football playoff rankings. We are still in this never-ending debate about Miami and Notre Dame. It's not totally just about Miami and Notre Dame, and I'll bring up that point. But I got Bruce on one side, and I got Stu on the other. Guys, go. Starting with Bruce. You go, Bruce.
Okay. First of all, I thought watching this is actually the first of the ranking shows I've been able to watch this year because I have YouTube TV and just hadn't been able to see it. And I got to admit, it was not a good look for Hunter Yurachek, the new CFP chair. I felt like he's the Arkansas AD. Felt like he contradicted himself every time he seemed to open his mouth. And it just left a lot more questions and a lot more skepticism. I know we're going to talk about Miami versus Notre Dame and to some degree Alabama in there and maybe Utah, but his rationale or his explainers were just such head scratching that I think that overshadows just what we're going to talk about because it calls into question all the credibility of here, right? Now, obviously the elephant in the room is this. Miami and Notre Dame have the exact same record, right? And the committee has used this position that because the teams, they're not even looking at head to head because they do not lump Miami and Notre Dame together, which to me is ridiculous because it's not like Miami is a group of five or quite honestly, Notre Dame plays a SEC kind of schedule. They don't. If you look at Notre Dame in terms of just because of what I was, kind of looking at this from the other side of it, you see Notre Dame's played some of the worst defenses in college football statistically. Like half their schedule, 5 of the 10 teams they played are ranked in the bottom 20 in college football. Now we're nitpicking on this, but part of it is because the committee's trying to say, oh yeah, there's a big difference between these two teams. Like Miami has these horrible losses. Miami didn't lose to Boston College, by the way. They didn't lose to like the dregs of the ACC. They lost to 2 teams, and one of them, because Louisville's playing SMU, are going to have a good chance of being back in the top 25. The other part is Hunter Yurachek talked about in one sense, oh, this team dropped, so we're not going to count it. But then this other team, Penn State, that still kind of counts because they used to be good or, whatever. Here's the deal. Louisville lost 2 games. Louisville has one of the best running backs in the country, Isaac Brown. He got hurt in the last 2 games. He leads all running backs in yards per carry, but he's been out. So it's not surprising. Louisville has struggled a little bit since then. I think that's the part that doesn't line up with me. But Stu, I come back to this. And at the end of the day, these 2 teams played. We saw the game. There's no speculation. There's no whatever. Miami won the game. And if you're not going to count that when the teams are similar, what's the point in actually playing the game?
Woo, he's fired up. My problem in general with these head-to-head conversations is it's like you're suggesting we should contort the whole rankings around the result of this one game that was played in August.
I don't care if it didn't happen. It's this season, Stu. It is this season.
But I'm saying, you said, oh, they're not that you can't believe they're not considered that close. I thought he actually did a pretty good job. The one thing I did, I agree with you. Some of the other stuff was kind of cringy. I felt like he talked more about losses than any committee chairman I've ever heard. Maybe it's because his first week on the job. But when Reese asked him that very first question, he said, and I've done the mock. I can tell you, they group these teams.
I've done the mock too. It doesn't, but you can separate it. I'll let Stu go, but go ahead.
He's saying that when they compare these teams, Bruce, you make it seem like they sit in a room and they say, all right, we better address this Miami Notre Dame question, right? And then we'll do the rest of the rankings from there. Like they're ranking these teams as part of a larger 25 team poll. And they're saying, based on the whole season, based on all these teams' data and who they beat and who they lost to, we think Notre Dame's in the conversation with Oklahoma and Alabama, right? Those are the teams right between them. And we think Miami's in the conversation with Utah and Vanderbilt and USC. So like, we don't really even consider them in the same realm. If they were in the same realm, then they absolutely would take the head-to-head. I'm baffled by the whole thing because I watched Miami and I don't think they're that great. But they were on August 31st against Notre Dame. So what I would say is if somebody genuinely believes, because if we're going to honor the head-to-head like you want to, Bruce, then Miami would have to be ranked 8th. If you honestly think they're one of the top 8 teams in the country, then rank them there. But I think I side more with the committee. I think teams get better and teams get worse over the course of the season. Notre Dame's gotten a lot better, especially on defense. Miami hasn't gotten a lot worse, but they've had some puzzling results in there. And I don't think they're as strong as we thought they might be based off like how they were playing in September. So if it were a toss-up thing, like I think both these teams are the same, then you definitely do the head-to-head. But I don't necessarily think they are.
What's the point in playing the game, Stu, if you're going to throw it out? The records are the same. It's not like Notre Dame has a ton of great wins. Their best win is against USC. It was a home game in the rain. I get it. Good for them. They ran it down USC's throat. If USC loses to Oregon, USC is probably not going to be in the top 20 then. You are projecting. Here's the problem I have with this is so much of this sport is about projecting. They care more about who you lost to. Hunter Yurachek talked about how great Notre Dame's losses were. Who was one of the teams that beat them? Like that
I thought that was pretty dumb. It
is pretty dumb.
I didn't like that explanation at all.
I honestly think what you're saying though is pretty dumb because this sport, again, if it happens on the field, we get so much other of this where it's like, oh, this formula says this and that formula says that. Well, you know what? If you can get the two teams to actually play, that matters. Because if we're not going to say it doesn't matter, then just throw it out and just say, hey, schedule the easiest teams you can. Schedule Boston College, schedule FCS programs, schedule whatever. But that's, they played. It's not like Miami is 7-3. Miami has the same record, the exact same record. They beat Notre Dame. By the way, also in that, they're the only team who kind of held Jeremiah Love in check. Jeremiah Love averaged 3 yards a carry in that game. So, credit to them. Their defense is very good. You can say, I think, Notre Dame's done this and Miami's done that. But at the end of the day, it was like they ranked them 8 spots different initially. And it's like, I feel like they're stuck on that. One of the teams in between them, by the way, is Utah. Utah, who got blown out at home by Texas Tech, and Texas Tech playing with their backup quarterback. Utah has another loss. Utah has one win that is ranked. One. It is number 25 Arizona State. And by the way, when they beat Arizona State was playing Jeff Sims as the quarterback, not Leavitt. That's a big distinction. Now, I know there's somebody on the committee who's the AD of Utah. They're in the top 25. But if you separate that
just happened.
I get it, but I'm just saying Utah has no good wins. They got blown out at home by a team with their backup quarterback. And they can't throw the football.
Let Ralph speak.
Okay, here you go.
No,
Ralph.
I'm cool because I've been on the side. I've been making this argument for Miami for a couple of weeks now, literally every week when I rank the teams in the AP poll. I think we have, I don't want to make the same points over again. I think we have a process problem. I think Bruce just alluded to it. They started Miami so far back. They say they're supposed to start with a clean sheet of paper every week. It doesn't feel like that.
And the first rankings, Ralph, came out just a few days after they lost to SMU.
They did.
Right?
They did.
So your starting point was on a down. And now Miami has to make up ground that maybe they wouldn't have if the poll came out a week later.
But that's not really what they say, right? Blank sheet of paper every week. So
there's no blank
clearly
sheet.
That's what's happening. I totally agree on listen, I think Utah's pretty good too, but listen, guys, at some point you have to sort of do a combination. I like to do a combination of eye test and metrics. Like I know people don't love those things all the time, but I tested metrics. What do the big numbers say that combine all these best losses and best wins and all kinds of other BS? Combine it to one number, and then also watch TV, right? Miami looks better than Utah to me, but it's a process problem because I think Miami has started so far back and now they can't catch up. I don't think you necessarily have to have Miami in front of Notre Dame, but the simple fact that they're not in the same bracket or whatever, the same tier as Notre Dame is problematic because now, again, they're chasing an almost impossible task. And here's the other thing too, like, hey, man, if you want to start, I don't think this should be a Miami Notre Dame conversation. How about getting one of them SEC teams out of there and making room for them that way with Miami, right? Like, why do Oklahoma and Alabama both get to be in and it becomes a Miami Notre Dame discussion? Oklahoma got dragged up and down the field by Alabama most of the game, and Alabama handed them 3 turnovers and Oklahoma has a bionic kicker and they won. Like, that's a result when we talk about head to head and hey, all head to head, maybe we shouldn't honor all head to head. Miami beat Notre Dame and was the better team.
You want to throw out the fact that Oklahoma beat Alabama on the road?
Miami beat Notre Dame.
Because by the way, that's a big thing for me too. When you talk about head to head games, where was the game? And what kind of game was it, right? Oklahoma went to Alabama and beat them. And yes, the stats were, but at the end of the day, they went on the road to Bryant-Denny Stadium and won. That matters, right? More so to me than Notre Dame went to Miami, lost by 3 points on a last-minute field goal. By the way, what's home field advantage worth? 3 points.
About 3 points.
That's why I'm not this wasn't so convincing that I'm forget everything else. Throw all they did from that point on in the season, this should trump everything.
Let me pick up on Ralph where I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. So Alabama's below Notre Dame. Alabama has 4 really good wins. They do have a bad loss at the start of the year against Florida State, who, by the way, Miami was up 28-3 on them and Tallahassee in the fourth quarter. I would think.
So why not get Alabama out of there then? In other words, again, I want this discussion to be more than Notre Dame at Miami. I want us to expand our minds.
Let's throw some common sense in there. Do you think Miami is a better team than Alabama?
I don't know that, Stu. I don't know that either.
But I think Miami is a better team than Oklahoma.
Yeah, well, that's a head-to-head problem. Well, this is where we have to step in and say, guys, there's 2 games left. This is all going to look different. If Oklahoma loses one of their last 2 games,
the only team, the problem with that, Stu, is most of these teams, there's the Iron Bowl. Auburn's a mess right now. Alabama plays a Division III school this weekend. You have Miami plays 2 of the teams that Notre Dame's already beat. Notre Dame plays 2 more horrible defensive teams, Stanford and Syracuse. Oklahoma plays 2 unranked teams. They're probably the team that might be most vulnerable because at least, LSU does have relatively comparable players. But I think that, again, we'll see how this plays out. But I think there's probably less chance of chaos in these kind of parameters than it's not like somebody's got a ranked team, playing in the next 2 weeks.
I think Miami has rebounded the last 2 weeks and looked really good against some inferior teams. And Virginia Tech would also fit that bill. But, they're going to go to Pitt. They got to play at Pitt, where Notre Dame just rolled Pitt. If they lose,
by the way, Miami crushed NC State. Notre Dame was in a tight game with NC State in the third quarter.
Easy. Stop doing this. Notre Dame beat NC State by.
What was the score in the third quarter?
But it was. If
I'm just saying, this is the nitpicky bullshit. This is the nitpicky bullshit that happens with this. That's the problem.
Don't be a potty mouth. The whole
game
beat
NC State 36-7.
Exactly.
Look at
the whole game.
Stu, I'm just telling you, the score. You're going to sit there and go, "Oh, well, this was this way." I watched the game. Yeah, I'm just saying. This is the nitpicky stuff that happens. That's the problem with this.
All I'm saying is if Miami looks good in these last 2 games, and especially if they go and win at Pitt, right?
It is not going to matter to the committee. I think you're kidding yourself if you think they're going to flip-flop it.
You're presuming everything else around them just stays exactly the same, right? What if BYU loses at Cincinnati this week? That closes a gap, right? What if Alabama jumps ahead of Notre Dame at some point and that closes? Like if they can get a lot closer, and then the committee might say, well, if they're this close to each other in the rankings now, then we need to apply that head to head.
I think you might be right. I really doubt it. I think the committee has made up its mind on Miami, and with the two teams they have left, barring a lot of chaos, and that would have to be SEC chaos, to be honest, because there's just a cluster of teams that are there. I mean, let's take Vandy out of it, but it's got to be something. Oklahoma probably has to get knocked off. I would not be surprised if there's only one Big 12 team, but I still think you're sitting there with 5 from the SEC. Again, Oklahoma is probably, if you're looking at it from the Miami perspective, I just don't see them flip-flopping where Miami and Notre Dame are. And I just think there's too many other things that are just kind of in place. Look, you could say Miami certainly has itself to blame. They lost in overtime to SMU. SMU is not terrible. But it was there in front of them. If you're in the ACC, you have very little margin for error. That's the reality.
But, right. So you just sort of nailed the point I was making. So because it's like just to give people a little behind the scenes, so I'm defending Miami last night. And this is why I go back to your point about the score is a score. And please don't tell me the whole game doesn't count. I've got Miami fans and Bruce, frankly, telling me Miami dominated Notre Dame, guys.
Well, my point was they shut down Jeremiah Love better than anybody else has.
That's fine.
And they could not block Miami's D line. That was my point.
It was a 3-point game. But it became a little to a certain degree, I am annoyed by having to defend Miami, because if Miami took care of business in the ACC, the way Texas Tech has taken care of business in the Big 12, I wouldn't have to be here wasting all this energy on Miami. Because as you said, they did put themselves into this spot by losing to an SMU team that lost to 2 mediocre Big 12 teams. So I am also, as much as I am trying to defend the honor of Miami, I am annoyed by Miami because they have created this. I watch Miami and I think that is a team that can win playoff games. That is a team that is among the 10 or 12 best in the country. I would like to see them in the playoff, but they screwed up. So I don't want to have too much sympathy here if they get locked out. The problem is I feel like they're getting locked out by bad logic. So
that's the frustration of this. That's why I brought up the other stuff. It's just, it's a ridiculous system. And we can all talk about, we sat in the mock this. It was look, let's put that on the shelf. You guys heard Hunter Yurachek. It's the losses that he's trying to explain. It's really Matt Fortuna, our old colleague, had a funny tweet. It was and you want to be my latex salesman, where he's literally showing two things. I think it's just it's not surprising that Arkansas has gone 8 years without having a winning season in SEC football since he's been there. You're just sitting there going, man, this is such a sketchy exercise. And I think this comes with, honestly, and I'm not arguing that they should never have expanded the playoff, but this is what comes when you expand the playoff. You're going to get who's number 9, who's number, you get into this minutia and this stupidity where it's this computer says this. And even though they have a 2-8 team ranked number, in their top 40, it's just, that's why I come back to, more than anything else, if they have the same record and there was a head to head, that should carry way more weight than anything else. And if you gerrymander the formula, so we're not considering the two, again, I don't got a dog in this fight. You and the three of us just want to watch.
Dude, you don't have a dog in the fight.
I don't have a dog in the fight. I honestly don't have a dog in the fight. I don't look, Stu, unlike probably a lot of people who cover the sport, is I'm going to watch the football games regardless. Last year, Miami had nobody to blame. Their defense imploded against Syracuse. We had Mario on our podcast the next day. Or a couple days later, he was very impassioned about it. You can diminish other teams, viability as getting into the top 12, but you have nobody to blame for that. The part that I come back to is just the one thing I kind of give a crap about when it comes to this is the head-to-head piece, because it's something you have to screw around with to try to project it any other way.
Okay, now that we have done an 18-minute segment that is basically a promo endorsing Tony Petiti's idea for AQs determined by conference standings and play-in games, we are going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with an Ole Miss-centric mailbag, lots of Lane Kiffin questions, and some breakout players. Okay, we're back, and we're going to hit some breakout players. I have two. Bruce has one. Stu didn't do the homework. Bruce, take it away.
All right. Ralph, I am going to go with a quarterback who started his career out at Rutgers and has gone on to Temple, where he's had a heck of a second act, and that's Evan Simon. 22 touchdowns, only one pick all season. He's been really good for Casey Keeler's team, who's had a nice first year with the Owls. They play a top 25 opponent. They got Tulane. It is going to be interesting. Tulane has to go to Philly. I'm not saying they're definitely going to knock them off, but I think Evan Simon will give them a lot of problems. Keep an eye on him and that game this weekend.
All right. My breakout players are two guys that most people have heard of because you've been watching a lot of Oregon football because they're good. They're two freshman running backs, Jordan Davison and De'Aaron Hill. Both guys have played well. They have been significant players, but I do think this week, along with Noah Whittington, I could see them getting even more work. I could see them going from single-digit carries to maybe double-digit carries because I think Oregon's got a big advantage in their running game against USC's run defense. So again, guys who we know are good, but I could see them having maybe their best games of the season. Jordan Davison and De'Aaron Hill, the running backs for Oregon. Let's hit the mailbag, starting with, a little more playoff discussion. I love this question, though I think it would never, ever happen. I'm going to start with you. I think I'm going to go to you first, Stu, on it. Okay. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to go to Bruce on this. Possibly dumb playoff question is from Rob Springer in Tampa, Florida. If Florida State was left out of the playoffs due to their quarterback being out, which is part of sort of the protocol of the committee, by the way, could a team such as Ole Miss get left out because their coach left before the playoff starts?
That is a great question. By the way, just because
crazy.
Yes,
crazy
I think it's a fascinating question. By the way, the CFP thing that I've been most worked up, including this, was the FSU getting left out. Like that one, as Stu remembers, I was not happy with. But in this case, it's fascinating. Our buddy Dan Wetzel did an interesting column for ESPN.com, I think this morning, as we're taping this, about Lane Kiffin, the prospect of him like kind of leaving a team in the lurch or leaving the team kind of twisting at the altar. It's hard for me to believe that a head coach would do that, because then that becomes your legacy. Like, I just can't imagine that any coach would do that, especially this team, as we've talked about for the last couple of weeks, is almost a lock to make it in the playoff. You got the Egg Bowl coming up right after Thanksgiving. I just can't see that happening. Now, if by some crazy stretch it did happen, I don't think the committee would punish the players. I don't think they would, but as we've seen this, like, they're making it up as they go along. So who the hell knows? I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, but I'd like to think the committee wouldn't punish the players. But like, if Lane Kiffin did that, man, that's like two questions in one, to be honest. Like, I mean, Stu, when you sit there and like, we can maybe get into this now, because 2 days ago you had a report, Lane Kiffin then went on McAfee to give his side of it or contradict it, I guess.
Basically try to deny it. Yeah.
So
we stand by our reporting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So go from that though.
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on. So I was definitely on the side of you should put Florida State in, but when they didn't, it wasn't like they were. They had new information, which was that Jordan Travis didn't get hurt on the last play of the last game, right? They saw that offense without him and said, yeah, that's not good. That's not good. We're going to leave him out. Disagree with it, but they did it. And so the question is, when does Lane Kiffin leave before the playoffs? if it is before the Egg Bowl, right? That's your one scenario. If he leaves before the Egg Bowl because he is facing this ultimatum, and then they go out and they stink against Mississippi State without him, I do think the committee could use that. They might not say it quite that way, but they could use it as an excuse to drop them out at 10-2. But if they win the Egg Bowl and they're 11-1, and there's no reason to believe there's been a drop off, no, I don't know how they would do that. You would be punishing the entire team because their coach was a jerk and left before the playoffs.
Ralph, can I circle back with you on this? Give me a % chance you think that actually could happen. I just find it so hard to believe that a coach would just hit the ripcord and get out of there. I mean, Lane Kiffin, you know how bad of a look that would be? You just brought out...
You don't think this coach might do that? Not just a generic coach, but this coach?
No,
I mean,
you know what?
After what he did to Tennessee, after what he did, after getting fired by Saban the week of the national championship game.
Those things, Stu, I get where you're coming from. Those things, like leaving like he did Tennessee, yeah, you kind of screwed over a team, but you're like, that happens. It was just super awkward the way it happened, but that's not this. This isn't even what Brian Kelly left at Notre Dame when there was a glimmer of hope that Notre Dame's team could have made the playoff. But this is not this is these guys are almost a lock to get in the playoff. If he leaves, even if it comes out that he's leaving after the Egg Bowl, he coaches in the Egg Bowl. I cannot fathom that any coach would do that and then be able to face other players.
I agree with you. I very much agree with you, Bruce. That's why you say a percentage chance. I know you like to play this game. I don't know. Maybe there's a 5% chance. Because
I don't think. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Because maybe the ultimatum is something where you feel hey, man, in other words, what if the ultimatum and the way Ole Miss is handling it creates some animosity that now Lane is hey, I just wanted to sort of go through a process here. And why are you guys coming at me? I thought we were working together here. But I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just saying if I really don't think this will happen, but if I think it happens, here's why I think it would happen and why I would give it maybe a 5% chance of happening. I don't see it. I also, I agree with Stu, I don't see the committee holding it against Ole Miss, especially if they win the Egg Bowl. I would just say, sort of as an aside, if they lose the Egg Bowl and are 10-2, you can throw them into the pile of teams that, regardless of whether their coach is there, that needs to be re-examined in a pile, in another pile. But I don't think
have a great resume.
Yeah, I don't think you would say, because your coach is gone, we're taking you out of the playoff. So if we want to leave it at that and move to the next question, I'm cool.
It's an all Ole Miss episode of the mailbag, by the way.
Yeah, and we need to take a break before we get to the rest of the mailbag and talk a little more Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss.
And welcome back to the Audible. Before we get to our next question, which is also a Ole Miss related question, Stu, you did say, could you see that coach doing it? I mean, I just can't see any college coach doing it, but you have the floor.
In terms of Kiffin leaving before the playoffs, well, let's start with the fact that we can all agree, not just in this, but in everything, right? Lane is not a typical coach, and to that end, his family going on tours of the two schools in the middle of the season, who does that? who does that? So right there is your first break from the norm. That's kind of putting them in this situation, frankly, where I'm sure Ole Miss feels embarrassed and maybe pissed about that. So if there was a coach that was going to walk out on their team before the playoff, I wouldn't put it past this coach, is all I'm saying. I really hope he doesn't. I think that would set a terrible precedent for college football, where now it's just okay. Because once one school does it, then every school that fires their coach in the middle of the season is going to expect the new coach to come, whether or not he's in the playoff or not.
All right. On that, so dear Bruce, Stu, and Ralph, on Tuesday's podcast, you talked about the ultimatum Ole Miss AD gave Lane Kiffin. You also mentioned that Boston College is by far the worst Power 4 program this year. I was surprised you didn't make the Jeff Jagodzinski connection. Historical doormat program achieves unprecedented success. AD gives coach an ultimatum to not interview for other jobs. Coach does it anyway, then fires the coach. The program never recovers. Honestly, Jeff Jagodzinski is a name that almost none of us have heard in a long time. Should this be a cautionary tale for the AD to not mess with Lane? Stu, I think you're the only person I know who has done a story on Jeff Jagodzinski in the last 10 years. So
2022, yeah. We were doing one of our coaching care. We do these special series. We were doing one on the coaching carousel. And I was like, man, what's he up to now? And it turned out this guy who was a very successful coach, albeit for only 2 years at an ACC school, was coaching in a Polish league. He was never able to get back to that level. It just torpedoed his whole career. And yes, it torpedoed the BC football program. I wouldn't say it's exactly the same situation because Ole Miss is not saying to Lane, you can't interview for those other jobs, right? Jeff Jagodzinski got fired just for taking an interview. They're saying, well, now that you've interviewed and you're deciding whether to take the job or not, we really need an answer. We can't wait on you forever. And I am sensitive to that. I mean, especially because these are schools in their own conference, guys. Lane Kiffin takes the LSU job. What's the next thing he's going to do? Tell Keon Lacey to come with him, right? There's a little bit of a trade secrets thing going on here that they have to be worried about. So I'm sympathetic, but I also wouldn't. I would be careful about screwing up what you have. This might not come along. This opportunity might not come along very often. It could make a big inroads for your program, the exposure of going to the playoff. And if he does leave, okay, at least the next coach gets to say, look what this program is capable of. But I think it's a weird situation all around. It's awkward. It would not be ideal for them to go. Because what is this? Today's November. We're recording this on November 19th. We're still a month away from the first round of the playoffs. You're talking about dragging this out for a month. And then if he wins even longer than that, I don't think anybody wants to do that.
Can I just throw one thing in there? BC has had also a lot of other issues that weren't just losing a good coach, right? The landscape of college football and college sports has changed around BC. Ole Miss as a program is better situated to handle life without Lane Kiffin, I think moving forward than BC was. Again, I think BC was just a little more fragile of a program because of a lot of other environmental factors, let's say.
Let's get to the next. And that question, by the way, is from Blaine in Virginia. I apologize, Blaine. I didn't mean to snub you. I didn't see that. Your name there.
All right. Stu, you want to fire up the next question to one of us? I guess me. I haven't taken one yet, right?
Okay. Ralph, this one is from Vinny, and the title is Hypocrisy. Imagine if an Ole Miss player spent this bye week talking with LSU in Florida about maybe transferring there. Imagine this player even sent his family on unofficial visits to the two schools to scope them out for him. The main point of the question is, why do coaches get away with doing this very things that they hate the most about NIL and the portal? It's a great question.
It's a great question, Vinny, and it really does speak to a greater problem with college sports is that we have one expectation level for the adults, quote unquote adults, coaches, ADs, all the people making decisions, and we have a different expectation level for the kids, the players, right? They can't make any money. We can make millions. They need to be loyal and stick to their commitments. We get to kind of go wherever we want. So it is one of the fundamental issues of why the system sort of collapsed. And I think a lot of coaches still don't totally get that. I think a lot more of the younger ones do, and they do understand, hey, we kind of put ourselves in this situation. That's why we need to sort of give some of the same freedoms to and rights to the players that we have. But you are absolutely right. It is a fundamental problem with all of college sports for years that the standards and expectations of the adults were not the same as the standards and expectations placed on players. And at a certain point, that helped drag the entire system down.
Yeah, it's not lost on me, guys, that literally, so Lane Kiffin, might leave in the middle of the season or before the playoffs. It was 2 weeks ago, Ralph, that the NCAA changed the portal window from December to January because we're sick of guys going in the portal before their season's over. You can't make this stuff up. I'm going to make a ruling on behalf of the group. I think I know who you guys would pick for the $12 Trader Joe's gift card, and that is Bob Springer, who asked us the question about if Ole Miss might get left out by the committee if their coach leaves. So Bob, please send your mailing address to theaudiblepod@gmail.com. That's it for today. Don't forget, every episode of The Audible is on YouTube at Audible Show. We will be breaking down this week's games live on there on Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. We'll see you then.